More on that in sports. Laura Baines will be with you at the top of the hour with more news. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. We're asking who is François Hollande, the socialist candidate for French president, who, with some little under 3 months to go before Election Day, has opened up a 20-point lead in the polls against Nicolas Sarkozy. With us to talk about it, Thomas Chevandier of the Socialist Party's Youth Wing, reporter Craig Capidis, Mathieu Doiret of Polling Institute Ipsos, and from Rennes in the Brittany area of Western France. So we're joined by John Gaffney, whose latest book, Political Leadership in France, From Charles de Gaulle to Nicolas Sarkozy, is soon out in paperback. Welcome back to all of you, gentlemen. Before the break, we were talking about image. We were talking about the difference in styles between the two candidates. Another important point, and this is one that could play during the campaign, and Craig Capidis was mentioning in part one how you have this sort of state-sponsored capitalism in France. There's also the image of who's the outsider and who's the insider, which is going to play a lot among the electorate. Now, the conservative candidate in the upcoming election, Nicolas Sarkozy, never attended one of Paris's elite Grande École graduate schools. His rival, François Hollande, graduating from 3 of those institutions, including the National Administration School, where he most notably rubbed elbows with the woman who would be the mother of his 4 children, the socialist's 2007 standard-bearer, Ségolène Royal. 5 years ago, she was the one facing off against Nicolas Sarkozy. John Gaffney, for people who don't follow France, I guess this is like imagining Bill and Hillary Clinton facing off against one another in the Democratic primary.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, the children must be really confused. Yeah, it is very strange. I mean, it's quite clear that Hollande had intended or hoped that he would be in a position to run last time. And Ségolène Royal basically did something which is a feature of the Fifth Republic, and that is to say that you kind of, she wasn't an outsider, but you kind of come in as if from the outside, and strange things can happen. The unexpected, that's one of the features of these presidential elections, is that the unexpected always does happen. And in 2006, when she gained the nomination, she came in and she just knocked the party barons, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, Laurent Fabius, and so on, sideways. But yeah, so it is very strange that that there is this. But you know, the French are very tolerant of these kinds of things, and it is, you know, it's all part of the enjoyment. I mean, one thing that is worth saying about Ségolène, at this time in 2007, she was ahead of Sarkozy, and it's the same for Balladur and Chirac. It's the same for Giscard against Mitterrand in '81. One has to bear that in mind, that in the January of the election year, the person who is often ahead is not the person who wins.
Mathieu Doiret?
Yeah, I think there is something special this year. In fact, it is the first one since 1988. The first election campaign where, in fact, 1 year before you had the same figures as in late January, early February, probably. That means that, in fact, for example, in 1981, Giscard was obviously leading the polls until January. In 1995, it was Prime Minister Balladur. In 2002, it was very even between Jospin and Chirac. And in 2007, Ségolène Royal was leading before January. So this year, we've got exactly the same figures in January 2012 as we had in 2011. And there is no reason to believe that it is going to change as fast as it could and had before. So,
and one of the quirky things about the French Republic is that incumbents have a hard time winning. The only 2 who've won, it's because they had minority governments at the time. François Mitterrand, when he's re-elected in 1988, the socialists are in the opposition. Ditto for Jacques Chirac in 2002.
Yeah, that's true, but I'm not sure there is a general rule, because this cannot happen again. What happened in 2002 and in 1988, sorry, because now the election are not held in the same order as before. the tenure of the president is 5 years as the one of the parliament, and election for the parliament are now always after the presidential election. So in any case, you cannot have this kind of situation. Theoretically, you cannot have a prime minister candidate against the president. But the only precedent that we can only definitely rely on, 1981, is probably too old and has clearly nothing.
All right, so the times have changed and the rules have changed. By the way, speaking of the times may have changed, but François Hollande, when he makes speeches these days, he refers a lot to the past to another François Mitterrand, France's last socialist president. Analysts say he's even taken on Mitterrand's demeanor. There you see him, that he's been apparently coached with his gestures, speaking a little bit slower to appear more presidential. And at that political rally we mentioned over the weekend, Mitterrand's daughter, Mazarine Pinjot, sat front and center next to Hollande's partner, journalist Valérie Trierweiler. These references all the time to François Mitterrand, does that speak to voters?
I don't know if it speaks to voters, but what we always say in those electoral campaigns is we want to show that the progress for the poor people happened during socialist government. That's why we go back to 1936. That's why we go back to 1981. That's why we go back to 1997. The social progress for the wide majority of people happened during socialist government. That's why we say, look what happened during socialist government, and look the difference between conservative government and socialist government.
And of course, François Hollande is not the same man as François Mitterrand. In fact, something the British press has picked up on, when Hollande in his speech quoted Shakespeare, they failed because they did not start with a dream. Turns out they were the words of Shakespeare, but not William. They were the words of Nicholas Shakespeare, who's a descendant of the Bard of Stratford, but he's a journalist and writer. But this
he was a Shakespeare,
but nonetheless, a lot of people bemoaning the fact that French presidents in the past were men of stature and letters, like de Gaulle, who was very erudite, like Mitterrand, who's somebody who loved literature. This kind of mistake wouldn't have happened with François Mitterrand.
I don't know. But,
it's a silly mistake. I mean,
yeah.
If people are going to make up their minds on Monsieur Hollande because of something like this, then frankly they don't deserve it.
But is it a dangerous game, hitching your star to François Mitterrand in that context?
Well, look, like Mitterrand or not, the man was a leader. The Socialist Party's problem here is that Monsieur Hollande is not Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Dominique Strauss-Kahn, a socialist, perhaps there are many people who don't like Socialist Party policy, but the fact was he knew how to get in a ring and play with the big boys. People would feel confident, the markets would feel confident, other countries would feel confident with the Dominique Strauss-Kahn until what happened in Harlem. As we were saying here before when the break was on, yes, this is a French election, and it's very inside politics, inside France. But there's a larger issue here, and it goes back to the concept of globalization. Whoever becomes the president of France is going to have a major role in a world that is growing more and more chaotic. And François Hollande, on that stage, even though it's a local election, and I understand that, and there are parochial issues involved, François Hollande does not have the chops to deal with these issues.
Can I come in there?
John Gaffney.
Yes, I mean, just to add to that, I mean, and whether this will, anything like this will happen before the election, but Craig's point about his image possibly will come to the fore if he is elected, and that is to say that that François Hollande, in order to give himself stature, has drawn upon the image of François Mitterrand, and it is quite clear that he he is in some ways copying him, and he's searching for that kind of legitimation within the Socialist Party of one of the giants.
And does it also come with the office? You have to appear a little bit regalian when you're the president.
I mean, that's certainly been the disapproval of Sarkozy of actually mistreating the office has been one of the reasons why, the stature of the office has been one of the reasons why he has been so unpopular. But the problem for François Hollande is that he said he wants to be a normal president, and he is. He's a regular guy. In order to train for the presidential candidacy, it is true that he has gone through a makeover, slimmed down, tell fewer jokes, and so on. But there is this kind of fundamental problem as to, are you going to be a François Hollande, or are you going to try and be a François Mitterrand? And I think he's caught slightly between those two kind of imperatives.
Thomas Chevandier?
I will say...
By the way, François Hollande told a lot of funny jokes when he was a young politician. We're not going to hear those anymore.
Yeah, but never mind. I want to know how he will change the country and make that France will be part of the country that will lead.
But will he seem disingenuous
I just want to say
his
one
personality is too different?
Electoral campaign reveal people. And in the Socialist Party, there were some people that weren't thinking that he was maybe a very good president. We wanted to see, and now everybody's convinced. Everybody's convinced. He's shown it on his speech on Le Bourget. He can show it on his platform that that he can change France, restore equality, and has an international vision. And I just have to say one thing. He's not a revolutionary. He just said, now finance lead politics. And he's just saying that politics might lead finance. He's said that we need public rating agencies. This is not revolutionary, but I think that it can restore trust for people toward their politics.
Let's pick up on that point and go back to those 60 commitments and that speech that you were alluding to, Thomas. Hollande's rhetoric will sound familiar to those following the campaign over in the U.S. Take a listen.
Let me tell you who my rival is, who my real rival is. It does not bear a name or have a face. It isn't a member of a political party. It will never run for office. It will never be elected, and yet it's the one governing. That rival is the world of finance.
Going after finance, putting the word change in his platform. These are some of the trimmings that Barack Obama is giving. In fact, he even in his speech, François Hollande said today in the press conference he gave, Obama said he wants the secretary of a billionaire not to have to pay more than a billionaire. I want the same thing. So hitching his star to Obama's, hitching his...
So disingenuous, though. They're taking terms and not putting them in context. The moment you bring up that question, you get into tax rates, capital gains tax rates, and a whole flotilla of tax issues that less than 1% of the public, I would suggest, even understand. Now, that I believe is gratuitous. This is precisely what I mean. It's very easy for him to say something like that. He says it with the elegance of margarine. And if you wanted to make that point, and there's some valid points in there, let me tell you who could have made that point, done it elegantly and been more specific and made people listen. Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Why? Because he's been in the trenches while this guy was going to all of these fancy schools.
But the question going forth, Mathieu Douard, is will he get political mileage out of sounding like Obama?
First, attacking finance was not a huge political risk, because obviously there is a majority quite everywhere in the world to agree that bankers are often on the wrong side. What is important here is, first, do not overestimate the regular guy aspect. People don't really think he is regular. People think he's someone who graduated from the best schools. He's knowledgeable, he's competent on technical matters. Nobody, even the far-right conservative, everyone agrees. The question is, first, okay, he hasn't got the experience of leadership that could be exemplified by Dominique Strauss-Kahn. But in fact, Nicolas Sarkozy had been budget minister for 2 years. François Mitterrand had been a minister of the Fourth Republic, not the Fifth.
Certainly. You're right, but when Sarkozy originally campaigned, okay, long time ago, when he spoke of these issues, he did sound as if he knew what he was talking about to many of the people.
And he was later foreign minister, finance minister, interior minister.
If I do not believe that France really needs a grande école educated technocrat as president in a world that is growing more fiscally chaotic with every passing day.
That is why the normal guy rhetoric was efficient. And do not in 1981, I'm sorry, it is the best precedent, even if it is so old. At the debate, the TV debate, the last one, François Mitterrand said, well, you're not the teacher, I'm not the student. I'm not listening to your economy lessons about the Deutsche Mark, about the European Union, about finances. He said, well, I am talking with my heart about what the people, the regular people, feel here in France because of unemployment, of the financial crisis. Nothing has changed.
All right, Mathieu Douaré, I'm going to give you the last word because you're the pollster here and we're running short on time. Nicolas Sarkozy, 20-point deficit. Can he make it up?
There is no precedent.
There's no precedent for that.
No precedent.
No precedent for that.
Wow.
Such a recovery.
Okay. Well, there you heard it from Mathieu Douaré. I'll have a date with you at the last week of April. See if that's true.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for joining.
It can be the precedent.
All right. I want to thank Thomas Chevandier for being with us, Craig Kopidis and John Gaffney for being with us from Rennes in Western France. And thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's time for business on a day when the markets are actually doing better. We'll hear it all from Tom Burgess-Watson.